like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, so today we're diving deep into something that's really got people talking.
Oh, yeah.
This House Ethics Committee report on former Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Definitely.
This report, it alleges some pretty serious misconduct, potentially violating state and House rules, involvement with a minor, and even payments for sex and drugs.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is, and that's what we're here to do today, to break it all down.
Yeah, make sense of it all.
Exactly.
You know what's really interesting to me?
What's that?
The committee even chose to release this report after Gaetz resigned from Congress.
Yeah, that's not typical.
Not at all. It really speaks to the gravity of the situation.
It definitely makes you wonder what they found.
For sure.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
The report alleges that Gaetz paid a 17-year-old for sex back in 2017.
Right.
And the committee, they believe this likely violated Florida's statutory rape law.
Which basically means having sex with someone under the age of consent.
Yeah, even if there's consent from the minor.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the report actually details the woman's testimony.
Okay.
She talks about receiving $400 in cash.
Wow.
And even witnessing Gaetz using cocaine at a party.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is.
And while Gaetz denies having sex with a minor, the report does present a pretty compelling case based on her statement and other evidence.
Yeah, and it goes even further.
Oh.
It details Gaetz's interactions with over a dozen women.
Over a dozen.
Yeah, alleging he paid them for sex using platforms like PayPal and Venmo.
So not just isolated incidents then.
Seems like a pattern.
A pattern of behavior.
Right. And the committee noted that there was this general expectation of sex.
Interesting.
Yeah, which suggests it wasn't just typical dating.
Right.
And they even mentioned specific examples of payments.
Oh, really?
Some exceeding $5,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is. Makes you think about the power dynamics involved.
Definitely. And speaking of power dynamics,
yeah,
we have to talk about Joel Greenberg.
Oh.
You know, former Seminole County tax collector and associate of Gaetz.
Currently serving an 11-year prison sentence.
That's right.
His role is key to understanding all this.
Okay, how so?
Well, the report alleges he organized many of these encounters using a website called seekingarrangement.com.
I've heard of that.
It's a website specifically for arranging relationships that involve financial support.
Right.
They even included text messages.
Text messages.
Between Greenberg and a woman discussing payment for sex.
Wow.
And get this, Greenberg actually sent a picture of Gaetz to this woman.
That's incriminating.
Very much so.
So it's not just allegations.
Nope.
There's actual evidence, texts, financial transactions.
Right.
It begs the question, why wasn't Gaetz charged in connection with Greenberg's crimes?
Especially since Greenberg cooperated with investigators.
Exactly.
That's a really good question.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
It's something legal experts are probably debating right now.
I'm sure they are.
We don't know everything the Justice Department could.
Right. They did their own investigation into Gaetz.
And decided not to press charges.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. And speaking of investigations, let's talk about that 2018 Bahamas trip Gaetz took.
Oh, the one the report focuses on.
Exactly.
Okay, so that trip involved 2 other men and 6 women.
Okay.
And the committee, they state that Gaetz engaged in sexual activity with at least 4 of those women.
So it sounds like this trip was maybe more than just a vacation.
Right.
Didn't the committee also find that it violated House gift rules?
They did. They said Gaetz accepted gifts of transportation and lodging. That exceeded the allowed amounts for House members.
Which raises ethical concerns.
Definitely.
And they even discovered the Justice Department was investigating whether the trip was part of an effort to illegally influence Gaetz regarding medical marijuana.
Wow. So we have potential violations of House rules.
Potential legal issues.
And a connection to someone already convicted.
It's no wonder the committee felt they had to release this report.
Even after Gaetz resigned.
It really adds another layer to this whole story.
It does.
And it makes you wonder if this is going to lead to even more scrutiny.
Of politicians' private lives.
Exactly. Could this be a precedent for future investigations?
That's a great question.
We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, this report is making waves.
Big time.
And it's raising some big questions.
About accountability.
About power.
And how personal and political life intersect.
Exactly. But before we get too deep into those questions, let's take a look at Gaetz's response to all of this.
Okay, let's do it. Gaetz has been pretty vocal in his denials.
Oh, yeah.
He's been saying these allegations are politically motivated.
Yeah.
He even said on X, formerly Twitter,
Right.
that he often sent funds to women he dated. Called it embarrassing, though not criminal.
So he's basically framing these payments as normal dating behavior.
Yeah, kind of downplaying it all.
Do you think that's going to work?
I mean, it depends who you ask.
True.
Some people might buy it.
Right.
Others might see it as trying to downplay something serious.
Especially with everything else in the report.
Yeah, all the other allegations.
It raises an interesting point, though.
About?
How we see these financial transactions between men and women.
In relationships.
Right? Like, where's the line between a gift
and something more transactional?
Exactly.
It's a good question.
It really blurs the lines.
It does.
Makes you wonder about intent.
Yeah, what was the purpose behind the payments?
Were they just being nice?
Or was there an expectation of something in return?
That's hard to say.
Yeah, without knowing more about each situation.
Right.
But the committee's observation about a general expectation of sex
Right.
suggests it wasn't always a straightforward romantic relationship.
So that's where the potential legal problems come in.
Exactly.
Even though the Justice Department didn't prosecute him.
Right.
Could this report cause other legal trouble for Gaetz?
Absolutely.
How so?
Well, the report itself could be used as evidence. Oh, I see.
In future legal proceedings,
Okay.
like state authorities in Florida,
Yeah.
they might take another look at those statutory rape allegations.
Which are serious.
Very serious,
Yeah.
with potentially severe penalties.
So even though he's not facing federal charges right now, this isn't over for him legally.
Not necessarily.
We also have to think about civil lawsuits.
Right. The women involved could sue him.
For?
Things like emotional distress, defamation, other damages.
That could drag on.
Oh, yeah. These cases can go on for years
And cost a lot of money.
and damage his reputation,
So the fallout from this could last a long time.
regardless of criminal charges.
What about the political consequences?
Well, he's already resigned from Congress.
Right.
But what about his future ambitions?
Could this report end his political career?
It's hard to say for sure.
Okay.
It's a major setback for sure.
Yeah,
Hard to imagine him regaining voters' trust after all this.
true.
His new job is an anchor on OANN, though. Oh, right. That conservative news network.
That might be a test
Of what?
of how much this scandal will affect his future.
It's an interesting choice for him.
It is.
And for OAN,
Right.
they cater to a specific audience.
One that might be more sympathetic to Gaetz.
But will that be enough to fix his image with the general public?
It's a gamble for them.
It really is.
They have to weigh the potential backlash
From viewers and advertisers,
against the benefits of having him on their team.
it's a risk.
At a calculated one.
We'll see how it plays out.
Only time will tell.
This whole situation really makes you think about our political climate.
It's
Are we just ignoring these kinds of allegations these days?
Or is there a demand for accountability?
That's a tough one.
It is. I think it's complicated.
How so?
Well, on one hand, we've got this rise in political polarization.
Where people overlook bad behavior from their own side.
Exactly. It's this tribal mentality,
It makes it hard to hold people accountable,
especially powerful people.
like politicians.
Right.
It's like we've become numb to scandals.
Yeah, there's always something new.
So we lose sight of the big picture.
That's a good point.
But I also think there's a growing awareness
Oh.
of the need for accountability
Especially when it comes to things like sexual misconduct.
and abuse of power.
Right. Social media has given a voice to survivors.
So there's less tolerance for sweeping things under the rug.
Exactly.
So it's like this push and pull
Between protecting our own,
and demanding justice.
where do you think things are headed?
Hard to say. It feels like it's changing.
We're seeing both sides
Lots of debate about what's acceptable behavior.
and what the consequences should be.
The Gaetz case is a perfect example.
It really is. It shows the cultural shifts happening.
We're re-examining our values,
Our expectations of leaders,
how we handle power, and accountability
and the media plays a big role.
in shaping how people see all of this,
Absolutely. How they cover the story
what they choose to focus on.
will have a huge impact,
It's a reminder to be critical of what we see and read,
especially with social media.
where misinformation spreads so easily.
We have to be able to tell fact from fiction,
Recognize bias,
form our own opinions.
based on a balanced understanding,
And that's what this deep dive is all about,
giving you the tools to understand this story,
and the bigger context surrounding it.
equipping you with the knowledge to make your own judgments,
To have meaningful discussions.
and to hold those in power accountable.
with that in mind.
Let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
and talk about the wider societal implications of this case.
Beyond just Matt Gaetz.
How we as a society respond to these kinds of allegations.
Especially against powerful people.
It really makes you think about power dynamics,
Oh,
how they
yes.
play out in like all parts of life.
Absolutely. If these allegations are true,
Right.
it shows how someone in a position of power can really take advantage of others.
It's a tough thing to think about.
It is.
Makes you question things like consent.
Coercion, abuse of authority.
And it's not just politics either.
No, not at all.
We see these same dynamics everywhere.
Workplaces,
Social circles.
even families.
It forces us to look at those uncomfortable truths,
About how power can lead to exploitation.
no matter the situation.
And this case also brings up the role of technology.
How so?
Well, the report talks about websites like seekingarrangement.com
Right.
and payment apps like Venmo,
Okay.
which raises questions about how these platforms can be used.
For maybe unethical or illegal things.
Exactly. It's like the dark side of technology
It is. These platforms can be great for connecting people,
and making things easier.
but they can also be misused.
And we have to be aware of the consequences.
So how do we respond to these kinds of allegations as a society?
That's a big question.
Do we believe the accusers,
Or do we give the accused the benefit of the doubt?
especially if they're powerful?
Or well-connected,
It often comes down to who we choose to believe.
whose voices we amplify?
And sadly, there's a history of ignoring or discrediting people.
Who accuse powerful figures?
And this case is extra interesting because it's about a politician.
Someone we elected to represent us.
It makes you think about our system
Does it do enough to screen for good character?
for ethical behavior.
How can we hold people in power to a higher standard?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. Some people say we need stricter vetting,
More transparency
stronger ethical rules.
for public officials
Others think it's up to the voters
to hold their representatives accountable.
at the ballot box.
And that brings up the whole thing about being informed citizens.
Yeah, how do we make sure voters have the right information?
How do we fight misinformation?
Especially on social media.
Media literacy is key.
We need to learn to evaluate information,
Recognize bias
get different perspectives,
and promote accountability.
where people in power face consequences.
And victims feel safe to speak out.
It's a tough challenge.
But so important to work towards.
For a fairer society.
This whole deep dive into the Matt Gaetz case has been eye-opening. It's made us think about some uncomfortable stuff.
About power,
And gender.
accountability.
And how it all connects.
So what happens now?
That's the big question.
Will Gaetz face more legal trouble?
Can he fix his reputation?
His career?
Will this lead to real change?
And how we deal with these kinds of issues.
Those are the questions we'll be thinking about.
For a long time.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives.
They make us think.
It's not about having all the answers.
It's about starting conversations,
Raising awareness
helping people understand.
so they can form their own opinions.
Based on the facts,
So thank you for joining us.
we hope you found this deep dive insightful.
And thought-provoking.
Maybe even a little bit challenging.
This is just the start of the conversation.
The search for truth and justice never ends.
And it needs all of us to participate.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.